Hi, this is Lori Kerrigan with video blog for Module 6. I reside in the state of Florida. The name of the board for licensed mental health counselors in Florida is the Florida Board of Clinical Social Work, Marriage and Family Therapy, and Mental Health Counseling. The website where I retrieved the disciplinary actions for my state of Florida is the Florida Department of Health website, which is florida.health.gov, which I gained access to through the Florida's Mental Health Professions.gov website. The site was last updated on 4/26 of this year, so just a couple of days ago. The disciplinary information can be found on the Licensing and Regulations Enforcement page, clicking the link Search Disciplinary Record, Florida Department of Health, 2021. According to the disciplinary actions found at floridahealth.gov 2021, April 26th, the most common violations occurring for licensed mental health counselors, which are also called LMHCs, include mandatory CE, continuing education violations, dual relationships, unsuitable actions due to mental and/or physical condition, which is also impairment, defrauding an insurance company, sexual misconduct, failure to report, and these were all the most common violations that I saw. My reaction to this is disgust for more of the severe violations, as well as a sense of awareness for how often these violations take place, which was a little surprising to me. It is appalling that a person would go to a professional to seek help, which can be a scary thing for someone to do, as well as include a financial investment, and instead of being helped, the client is harmed. It is the client making themselves bravely vulnerable, and then the vulnerability being taken advantage of by the person there to help, and that's all legally and ethically wrong. I mean, I guess sometimes it's not always legally wrong. Most of the time it seems to be, and it's definitely ethically wrong. It is also disturbing to see even the less severe ethical violations because counselors are held to a higher standard of integrity, I believe because we are in the helping profession. It makes me grateful for the strict laws and licensing standards to prepare counselors for how to properly care for themselves and clients, but it also makes me aware that there's more that's needed to be done so that the frequency of these violations is not as much. Themes I saw when looking through the board discipline were violations for very intentional and harmful acts, such as sexual misconduct. I also saw acts that I believe the counselors may have thought were victimless or harmless crimes, such as insurance fraud, though that does clearly harm many people, and acts that may have been avoided with more training on ethical decision-making processes, like knowing whether or not to break confidentiality when a client or another person may be at harm. And also maybe even just more training could take place for things such as dual relationships as well. Disciplinary themes I saw were revocation of license, fines, and education. While looking at recent cases of ethical violations from my area in the state of Florida, I found a case that took place in 2020, which involved an LMHC doing marital counseling with a couple. This is DOH versus Jill Marianne Heingarter, LMHC, 2020. While in marital counseling with this couple, she had a sexual relationship with the husband, the LMHC did, both physically and through phone calls. By doing this, she violated ACA Ethics Code A1A, which is primary responsibility of respecting the dignity and protecting the welfare of the client, as well as Code A5A and B, and A5E, which prohibit sexual relationships and inappropriate virtual relationships with clients and their family members. The Florida laws violated were sections 491.009, Regulations of Professions and Occupations, 2012, through a violation of section 491.0111 of Florida statutes, Regulations of Professions and Occupations, 2020, which prohibits an LMHC to engage in sexual misconduct with a client. The outcome was revocation of her license, not able to practice counseling any longer with her license. She also had to pay legal fees of nearly $5,000 to the Florida Board of Clinical Social Work, Marriage and Family Therapy, and Mental Health Counseling. When it comes to impairment and the ACA Code of Ethics, Section C2G of the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics requires counselors to monitor themselves for signs of impairment in their own physical, mental, and emotional health, to refrain from offering or providing professional services when such impairment is likely to harm a client or others. This may also have been violated by the LMHC in the previous discussed scenario. When it comes to my state's codes regarding impairment, the Florida Board of Clinical Social Work, Marriage and Family Therapy, and Mental Health Counseling legislative statutes are enacted by the Florida legislature, published in the laws of Florida, and codified in the Florida statutes. Updated in 2020, the law regarding regulations of professions and occupations, 491.009, Section P, states that being unable to practice the profession for which he or she is licensed, registered, or certified under this chapter with reasonable skill or competence as a result of any mental or physical condition, and it goes on to talk about how that could be illness, drunkenness, mental impairment, all those things. It then goes on to say if the violation is found to be true, the LMHC must submit to a mental or physical examination by psychologists, physicians, or other licensees under this chapter, designated by the board. If the LMHC declines doing this, the evaluation can be enforced through the court. This would be done hidden from the public so that the LMHC would have some privacy. The law also states that the LMHC, within reasonable intervals, is given an opportunity to demonstrate that he or she can resume the competent practice for which he or she is licensed, registered, or certified with reasonable skill and safety to patients. And this is all from Regulations of Professions and Occupations, 2012. And finally, a question that I have is what would have happened in this scenario of sexual misconduct if the counselor would have recognized her inappropriate feelings and sought help from a colleague? Would that have resulted in disciplinary measures as well? Or is there a safeguard in place for counselors who are tempted to violate ethics in any way to have a safe place to seek help without it being reported? Thank you. Have a great weekend.